Welcome back to Hospitality Reinvented. This is episode number 28 with your host, Doug Radkey, the founder and principal consultant with KRG Hospitality. Today, we are talking about the question that every ambitious operator just loves to ask, often too early, and it is also the follow-up to the last episode that we did on stabilization. But the question that I am referring to today is, when do I know that I'm ready to scale my business? Now, listen, I know scaling, again, it's exciting and it's a milestone that many of you want. It's maybe the moment that many aspiring entrepreneurs feel like they've made it. But here is the brutal truth to this. Most hospitality businesses that scale, they do it too soon and do not actually, scale. They just multiply their problems. They take chaos and then they spread it across 2 or 3 locations. They take weak leadership and then they duplicate that. They take thin margins and make them even thinner. They end up taking inconsistency and then they turn that into a brand reputation problem. Scaling doesn't create strength. What scaling does is it exposes the weaknesses. So today, I want to walk you through what scaling actually means, when it makes sense to scale, and what the signs are that you are ready to scale. This is not about hype. This is not about ego. And this is certainly not any kind of motivational speech. I want to hit on real leadership, real readiness, and real results. So let me, again, like I did last episode, start with a quick story here. A few years ago, I sat in on a call with an operator who said something that I have heard hundreds of times over the years, is that we are now ready for location number 2. They were excited. They were proud. They were busy. Their Instagram looked incredible. The dining room was, maybe full on weekends. Their friends and their guests, they kept, telling them that, hey, yeah, you need to open another location. So they assumed that all of this meant that they were ready. And then I asked them a few fairly simple questions. What are your current margins? Where are you with your prime costs? Who can run this location without either of you, being there? What is your training program and training system? What parts of your business are still, living up in your head? And there was this complete silence. And then the real truth started to come out. They were still working, those 60 to 70 hour weeks. They were, the ones that were still solving every single problem, putting out fires every single day. Their inventory was still, a little inconsistent. Their training and their labor scheduling was done, kind of emotionally, and their systems were still, verbal. Their best staff stayed because of them, not because of the systems and the brand that they had built. They weren't ready to scale. They were ready to get exhausted in 2 locations instead of 1. That is what happens when you confuse, revenue and success with readiness. Listen, I get it. The market can love you. You get all these great reviews, and the guests, they just talk about you all the time. They love your brand, and your brand can look great. But scaling requires something so much deeper. It requires infrastructure. So what does it mean to actually scale? Scaling is not just opening another location. Let me repeat that one more time. Scaling is not opening just another location. That is expansion. Scaling is the ability to duplicate your business model, your guest experience, and your profitability without diluting the brand or depending any further on the founder. Scaling is repeatability. That's, repeatable, people systems. That's repeatable operating systems. That is repeatable training programs and training systems. And that's, repeatable performance of your business. If your business can't be repeated without you being there and being present, you do not have a scalable business or brand. You have a founder-dependent business that performs because you are there. And founder dependency is the number one reason that scaling ends up failing. Now, here's what typically happens. Most operators, they scale early for really, 3 reasons. The first, it's the ego, the validation of it all. It just feels good, right? But the second, it is fear. They think a competitor will beat them to it, so they just rush to that second or third location. And the third here is that it is a misunderstanding. They believe a busy, business equals a ready business, but a packed bar, restaurant, or hotel that can hide instability. Sales can be loud, but that profit can still be very quiet. And profit, tells the truth. I cannot stress this enough. Scaling when you are not ready is not ambitious. It is actually reckless, which is why I want to tie this to what we talked about back on episode number 27 as well. You cannot scale a business that is not stabilized. If your business, is inconsistent, scaling will amplify that inconsistency. If your business is chaotic, scaling is going to spread that chaos. If your margins are fragile or thin, scaling is going to accelerate those losses. So before you scale, you need stability in your business model. You need stability in your leadership bench. You need stability in your systems and in your playbooks. You need stability in your financial performance and your guest experience and your culture. Scaling is not the next step after opening. Stabilization is actually step number 2, and scaling is earned through consistent stabilization. So now let's talk about that readiness. Here are some of the signs that we look for that, maybe you will be ready for that next step. So the first I like to go over is, are your numbers predictable? It means that your cost of goods, your labor productivity, your contribution margins, your break evens for the day, the week, through the month, the quarter, and the year. Your cash flow timing inside and out. And most importantly, those metrics are stable and those metrics are predictable. You aren't guessing, you aren't hoping. Remember that predictability is the foundation of scalability. So the second sign that we look for in your business is that it can perform without you. If you cannot take a 2-week vacation without panic, you are not ready to scale. Scaling requires systems, and it also requires absence. If you are still an employee in the business, you cannot duplicate this. And the third system is that your systems are documented. The business cannot live in your head. Your training cannot be, Shadow David for the next 3 shifts. Your standards cannot change, based on who is on a shift. If your business runs just on memory, scaling is going to 100% collapse. Systems and playbooks are what create that needed replication. Now, the fourth sign is that you have leadership depth. You need managers and coaches who can lead people, not just fill schedules. You need a bench of leaders and coaches. Scaling without a leadership bench is how owners end up destroying themselves, right? All right, now there are 2 more signs that I want to go over here. The 5th sign is that your guest experience is also repeatable. Guests love consistency, right? I'm sure you do as a guest at other places. If your experience is inconsistent, your brand will suffer quickly when you look to expand. The experience must be systemized and replicated at the next location as well. How many times have you visited, a brand in a market and then tried them again and maybe in another market only to feel like the experience was different from the first one that you went to? That simply cannot happen. The guest experience must be repeatable, not personality driven. Now, the 6th and final sign here is that we've got to look for your culture being strong and clear. Culture is arguably one of the most important operating systems for your business, right? If culture is weak, scaling is just going to create turnover and more inconsistency. If culture is strong, on the other hand, scaling creates brand ambassadors and momentum for your business. Now, those are the 6 signs that we look for. But what is maybe the most important question to ask before you scale? Here is the question that no one seems to ask. Why do you want to scale? Is it for ego? Is it for money? Is it for freedom? Is it for building a legacy? Scaling for the wrong reason will create the wrong outcome. Scaling is not automatically the goal, and it cannot be automatically the goal either. A profitable and stable single unit business can be a phenomenal wealth machine if you design it properly. Scaling should not be an escape from problems. It should not be it really should be an expansion of your strengths. Now, let's talk about the three major scaling models or paths in hospitality. There is typically, the corporate owned expansion, the franchising system, and also a licensing system. Each of these, require different levels of readiness. Now let's look at the first one, corporate owned. This is the most capital intensive, but gives you the most control when you're looking to scale. You carry the financial risk, you manage the people, you build the infrastructure, and this requires, really strong operating systems and a very deep leadership team. It requires capital planning and centralized control of purchasing and training and overall brand messaging. If you don't have these, corporate expansion, really becomes a cash drain for you and your business. Now, the second one is franchising. First things first, franchising is not selling a logo or just a brand name, right? Franchising is about, selling a repeatable and profitable and proven system. You are not, building restaurants, for example. You are building franchisee success. If your systems are not tight, you will create franchise failures and long-term brand damage. Franchising requires a franchise-ready, playbook and a series of training systems. Franchising requires quality assurances and very strong legal compliance structures as well. And franchising requires strong brand awareness and also standards. So if you are not obsessive about consistency, do not look to franchise your business. And the third path, as I mentioned, is licensing. Licensing is often misunderstood. Licensing can be a very powerful way to scale a concept, in this industry without complexity. But licensing still requires brand control and also operating standards. Licensing still requires agreement clarity and the protection of the experience. Licensing done right, though, can really protect the brand while creating new revenue channels for you. So, for example, rather than selling a full franchise system, you can license a bar or restaurant, name and menu and systems and signature recipes to an independent hotel operator to manage. This model allows a brand to expand its presence and increase revenue without all that heavy capital expenditure of opening corporate-owned locations and without the real strict, legal regulations associated with franchising as well, right? So here is maybe one final truth about scaling here before we wrap up. Many operators, they end up choosing the wrong market, which is an absolute brand killer. They chase that next cheap rent. They chase maybe convenience. They chase a new, shiny city and market that seems to be up and coming. But scaling is not about where you want to go. It's about where your brand can continue to win. You must complete feasibility studies to truly understand demographic fit and competition, density. You must complete, guest behavior analysis and labor availability and supply chain and vendor networks. You must really understand seasonality and tourism cycles. And most importantly, you must know if it's going to reduce any foot traffic to another location of yours. If it is, too close, yes, you can share resources, but it can also hurt the foot traffic of the other one. Scaling into a market that doesn't fit your brand is not growth. It's basically self-sabotaging, So when you scale correctly, the outcomes though can be super powerful. Your income can become very diversified. Your brand, can really gain some strength. Your investment values, they grow. Your leadership team can start to evolve and your business becomes an asset, not a job. Scaling can really become, a wealth building strategy and not a stress amplifier, but it only works when the readiness is real. All right. So let me just quickly reframe, scaling to the most simplistic mindset here. Scaling is not a reward for being busy. It is a responsibility. It is a decision to duplicate your leadership. It is a decision to duplicate your culture. It is a decision to duplicate your financial discipline. Again, it is not about expansion. It is about replication. That's the mindset shift here that needs to happen. And if you can't replicate consistency, you shouldn't replicate anything. So in closing, when do you know you are ready to scale? It's when your business is stabilized. It is when your numbers are predictable. It is when your systems are really documented. And it's when your team and your leadership is not dependent on you. It's when your culture is strong. And it's when guest experiences are repeatable. And most importantly, when you are scaling, you have to be doing it for the right reason. Because scaling, done right, yes, it creates that freedom, but done wrong, it just creates a second job. Thank you for listening to Hospitality Reinvented. Until next time, stay bold, stay strategic, and let's keep reinventing hospitality together.